This is it has to do with understanding the returns on mutual fund schemes. Of course, you can look at it in terms of the gains that you make from the start date to the end date. That would be absolute returns, but there's a lot more to it. Joining me to talk about this is Santosh Navlani, who's the Chief Operating Officer at ET Money. Thank you so much, as always, Santosh, for taking the time. Let's start with a conversation about CAGR, because that, of course, is what a lot of people in the industry look at when they're talking about multi-year returns. Could you help us understand, one, how to look at returns in the first place, and where does CAGR come in?
Yeah, so, Alex, I think there is a lot of misconception about how to measure returns, and it's very human to not appreciate the depth that return calculation can actually have. Typically we have been we've always exposed to narratives like somebody's parents or somebody's father invested 10 lakh rupees in a real estate and or a land or an apartment 20 years ago, only 10 lakh rupees, and it went on to become like 2 crore rupees. And you say, wow, that's an amazing investment return. Whereas when you look at the depth inside and see that what kind of CAGR that investment would have, it becomes like 16%. Yeah, and if it becomes 10 lakh rupees invested over 25 years, becoming 2 crore, it becomes 12% odd. So I think CAGR, compounded average growth rate, actually helps us understand these anomalies or these compounding which can distort the picture many times. That I know somebody's money became 20x, but what is important to understand how much time period it took to earn that return. And CAGR is one of the best ways to really understand that. So let's look at this way. When you invest in a mutual fund, there is never a guaranteed return. Unlike a fixed deposit, when you go to a bank and make an FD, you will be promised that you would get 6% return, 7%, 8%, but it's guaranteed every year you will be getting interest credited in your bank account, or you can opt for a return on maturity, but your return will be 8%. Technically speaking, if you look at a CAGR of an FD for 5 years of 8%, it may be like a percentage point. 8% might show like 8.3% because of compounding, and that's about it. But people understand that 8% FD means every year you get 8% guaranteed. But you say a mutual fund has given 14% CAGR over the last 5 years, while technically, theoretically, it's right that the money would have actually appreciated 14% every year in that sense and given you that kind of return. But the fact is, returns have always ups and downs because there's no guarantee in mutual fund. So compounded annual growth rate is basically one of the representation of if your investment was X 5 years ago and it has grown to Y in the period of 5 years. That can be measured well when you look at a representation like CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. So it's basically averaging out the return that you would have got from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3, year 3 to year 4, and year 4 to year 5. If you average out those returns, it will actually be something called as CAGR. So you may have returned minus 2% in year 1, sometimes minus 5% in year 2, but like 20% in year 3, 20% in year 4, and some other percentage in year 5. If you average out those returns, you would actually get something called as compounded annual growth. It's one of the best ways to measure returns from mutual funds, but also helps you compare in a realistic way returns from different asset classes so that you can take an informed decision about your investments.
Santosh, but there are a few drawbacks also, as I understand it, when you're looking at CAGR, right? It could lure you into thinking, for example, that things are very smooth and even, but that's not necessarily the case, right?
Yeah. So every measurement, Alex, will have its pros and cons. So typically, as investors, we're always looking at how much we put in and how much we got in the end, and that what satisfies us. But any long-term investment which is non-guaranteed in nature and subject to market variations on daily basis will have its ups and downs. And CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, hides the volatility or ups and downs that your returns can see. So as I mentioned in the beginning, that your mutual fund may have given you -2% in year one, -5% in year two, and then 20% in year three, and something like 20% again in year four. From year three to year four again, I mean to say that, and then from year four to year five again, some percentage point. If you average out these five kind of returns, you would actually get CAGR. So what it does, it hides the volatility. So a long-term investment which is non-guaranteed in nature should be looked upon with a CAGR view, but with an understanding that there may be ups and downs in the entire investment period. As I refer to example of real estate, right? Typically, people always look at that. Somebody invested 10 lakh rupees, and in 20 years he got 2 crore rupees. Such an amazing period of return, and mutual funds cannot match it. That's so wrong, because money growing 20x in 20 years is actually compounded growth rate of 16%. Now, the same land or same real estate would have probably also gone up and down, may not be as much as a stock market or a mutual fund goes through, but the ups and downs get hidden because you don't track that price on daily basis. But when you look at the 1.9 crore windfall gain over 20 years, it is only 16% CAGR in that sense. And there are many mutual fund schemes which can allow you to earn that kind of return, of course, with ups and downs. But if you are happy to hold a real estate for 20 years, and you should be happy to possibly own a mutual fund for 20 years as well, and returns may just look similar when you compare to asset classes.
Now, the one thing I think that CAGR does not do is that it does not account for incremental additions that you make, or investments or reductions that you make from your portfolio in a given period of time. So when you have to account for all of those things and calculate that as well, how do you do it?
Yeah, so to overcome that thing, the CAGR has two kind of cons, if I get to put. The first con we discussed was it hides the volatility or ups and downs that one would see during the course of the investment tenure. And second aspect is when you're doing SIP or monthly investments or irregular investments, sometimes you do lump sum, sometimes you start an SIP for a few months or a few years. Again, you basically stop SIP and start doing ad hoc investments. Now, when you do that, calculating CAGR is very difficult, because the every investment that you're doing will have a different investment tenure. So take a theoretical example that you're somebody who's investing for 20 years, and you put some money in year one regularly through SIP. In year two, you basically do some kind of few lump sums because you don't have regular income, and you stop SIPs. Again, from year three to year four, you do some money. You take out some money in between, because many people do. It's not that people don't have cash to require in between. So if you look at, if you withdraw money in between over a 20-year period, some amount you withdraw, it will actually have a different investing tenure. It will not be 20 years, because you put money for some time and took out again in 7th year, for example. So when you basically are putting money every month or in an ad hoc way, and also taking out in between, CAGR actually becomes an incorrect way to measure the return of that kind of investment behavior. And it is overcome by something called as XIRR, which is like an internal rate of return, or extended internal rate of return, as it's called in theory. And what it does, it basically calculates when you're applying XIRR methodology to calculate your returns. What that methodology does is basically assumes the exact investment tenure for each investment that you keep or withdraw, and calculates the compounded annual growth rate of each of them. And then depending on number of investments and withdrawals that you make, it will actually find tenure of each of them and add them all together in the end to come across a one unified number called XIRR. So for example, if you do an SIP for an amount over of 10 years, then you may look at that over, for example, an SIP of 10,000 rupees every month, investing 1.2 lakh rupees each year. You don't withdraw anything in between. And for 10 years, for the sake of simplicity, you would have invested 12 lakh rupees, and then money would have grown to some number. if you look at that, I put in 12 lakh rupees and got so much amount in the end. And that CAGR will look misleading, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. But the real number is XIRR in that case, where if you look at XIRR, it might look higher simply because each investment of SIP would actually have got different tenure, and every future installment would have got lesser time to stay invested, and hence your return may actually look better. So XRR helps you overcome that behavior which is more regular in our lives, which is SIP for measurement of returns.
Okay, let's also talk about absolute returns, because I think in a sense you already described it when you talk about those dinner parties where that uncle has bought, a plot of land in 1995 and now it's worth a few crores, and everybody wants to know where that next deal can be found, but they don't really account for the fact that the CAGR might just be a few percentage points, not necessarily as high as 15 or 16%. So is it wrong to look at absolute returns?
I would say so. I would not simply see. We cannot overcome that human, behavior that we all exhibit. That I put in X lakh rupees or X thousand rupees, and that money went on to grow to become X crores. We always will be, having that, wrong tendencies because of human emotions. But judging an investment just on absolute returns will always be bad. So you should not do that. You can always say that I invested 10,000 rupees every year for last 10 years, and I got like such 1 crore amount in my bank account in the end. That's the wrong way, because 12 lakh rupees is not going to that amount. Your each investment had different tenure. So absolute returns actually hide it. You cannot run away from, because you'll end up doing it all the time. But judging an investment, how good or bad it was by absolute, can be misleading. So you should always look at CAGR, CAGR if you're looking at investment performance of a lump sum investment, and look at XIRR if you're looking for a ad hoc SIP kind of investments. Do it for your own satisfaction, if that helps you, that my money actually grew so much, so many multiples. But judge the performance of the investment with CAGR or XIRR.
All right, Santosh, thank you so much for joining us and, in fact, giving our viewers a sense of how to view their returns from mutual fund schemes. Always a pleasure speaking with you.